welcome here today. As you know from the beginning, I committed to a theme of transparency across state government. And what we're talking about today originated in the prior administration, was brought to our attention, and we're going to do just what I said. On any issue, there's going to be full transparency on it. Earlier this week, Hannah News published a story about IEDC and Elevate Ventures. I commend their team for their work, and I want to share a few details about the situation. I have directed the hiring of an independent forensic auditor of the IEDC and its affiliated entities. Where we have found impropriety or even the appearance of it, we have reported it to the Inspector General. We are not rushing to any conclusions. We want to make sure things are reviewed independently. Only then will we take any and all appropriate action. This month, I signed an executive order requiring all state-affiliated foundations, including the IEDC Foundation, to go above and beyond in their reporting and disclosures. Even though they have an IRS exemption, all states must file 990 reports. This ensures the highest level of transparency for taxpayers. The IEDF has now provided the missing audited financials to the State Budget Committee. We are on our way to greater transparency in that regard. Have a high level of confidence in our Commerce Secretary, David Adams. He will provide the leadership we need to help grow Indiana businesses and bring Hoosiers more good-paying jobs. Transparency is essential. It is essential for good government, and it's what taxpayers deserve. David.
Thank you, Governor. As Governor Braun just shared, we are hiring a firm to conduct a thorough, independent forensic audit of the IEDC and all of its affiliated entities. We're evaluating national firms as we speak, and we expect to have one hired within the next few weeks. Once the firm's on board, we anticipate that this forensic audit will take somewhere between 6 and 12 months. And as the governor has directed, we're going to utilize IEDC funds to pay for this audit. The current funds that have been designated for Elevate Ventures are now frozen. This includes the second tranche of funds from the SSBCI, and we're going to place those funds on hold until further evaluation. We do expect that Elevate Ventures will fulfill its financial obligations to the IEDC. I do want to say that the IEDC plays a critically important role in this state. It's a strong agency. We help Indiana businesses grow. We help attract businesses here, from entrepreneurs to large organizations. We are going to bring the transparency to this agency and its partners, and it's only going to make us overall much stronger. In the last 4 months, I've received great input from our business leaders across the state as we've been reaching out to communities in terms of what they need. Whether it's ensuring a healthy environment for entrepreneurs, limiting regulations to help those businesses flourish, we're moving full speed ahead. We will pave the way to grow well-paying jobs here in Indiana, raise the GDP per capita, and we're going to be accountable to taxpayers as we do so. Thank you.
Okay, questions?
Governor, what about the IEDC board itself? You had conversations with those folks. They were there when all this went down. Did them sort of maybe step down or resign, or just going to wait for the report to come out?
We're probably not going to do anything until we get all the information, but all of that comes into play in terms of what you might do differently to prevent anything like this once we find out what there is to it. The constitution of any board should be on top of it and involved, and that'll be something that may or may not get restructured, may or may not have different members on it, but we won't do anything until we get the full information from the report in. We're just not going to, we want to make sure it's done quickly and we get to the bottom of it.
Governor, are you concerned about irregularities or illegal activity?
Well, we're concerned about anything that might be out there. I mean, when you've got irregularities, or if it goes beyond just that, that'll all have to stand the consequences of what a thorough audit will generate. So I'm not going to be, you know, it happened under a different administration, but whatever we learn from it, then you'll deal with how to handle it and also be instructive in terms of what you might do to make sure it doesn't happen again. I didn't hear the question. Well, then that would take its own process in terms of whatever happens that we glean from the audit. That'll unfold procedurally the way it would have to based upon what we find.
Do you believe this is an isolated incident, or is this typically IEDC?
Go ahead, we'll start here.
Can you talk more about what those concerns are that you found? Are the allegations that were in the news report the same that your office has?
David, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. I mean, I think that was enough information within that that suggested we, instead of just looking at that as an isolated instance or a set of particular items, it really said, you know, what we need to do here is a comprehensive forensic audit of not just the IEDC, but all of its affiliated entities. That way, it will give us a very clear picture, if there are issues, how we are going to work to address them. We just don't know at this point, but there's enough there that says, look, we need to look at this comprehensively.
Are the foundation's funds also being frozen at this point?
Well, we are taking a look at all of this, the IEDF, the IEDC. I mean, so it's everything, it's all the above. So.
You mentioned that Elevate Ventures funds at this point have been frozen while this audit is going to be taking place. Is the same also true for the IEDC foundation funds?
So for the foundation funds, we are not going to expend any additional dollars at this point.
Do you think that this goes beyond Elevate Ventures? The IEDC has several different partnerships. You know, is this just limited to that situation, or is it more broad?
Well, we don't know. And again, that's the intent of hiring an independent national firm to come in and do an audit of all of this to help us understand, in fact, if there are issues, or candidly, there may not be issues. But we thought instead of trying to do this on a piecemeal basis, the appropriate action to take is let's take a look at everything comprehensively, give the firm an opportunity to come in, understand what's going on, and then provide us feedback in terms of what they find.
Governor, I'd like to ask a question to you. The lack of transparency and the secrecy that has been a part of IEDC, the IEDC Foundation, Elevate Ventures, it's not a coincidence. It was designed that way by a previous administration, and it was codified into Indiana law by the legislature. Was that a mistake?
Well, I've campaigned on full transparency, and I would say they didn't do a very good job there. So I would say not erring on the side of full transparency. You're now litigating through it, and I would say that it was a mistake, because if there's any hint that something should be more transparent, you ought to get out of the gate that way. So we'll find out, what this is all about. But if it was put out there from the get-go, to me, that's something I think would have been a bad approach out of the gate. Because then you can see it along the way, and if there's something that isn't right or something is afoot, it's going to be called out. And that would apply to anything as a general approach.
Governor, the state budget bill is going to give you appointment of all 9 of the IB Board of Trustees spots, get rid of the 3 that were elected by the alumni.
Yep.
Why is that being done?
I think that's being done because the current process has not maybe yielded the proper results on the entirety of how you'd want that important part of our state to be run, from curriculum to cost to the whole way one of our flagship universities has been operating. So I want to get a board there that is going to be maybe a little more rounded, that's going to produce better results.
What about alumni who say that they deserve a voice in being on the board?
Well, I think that we're going to have a different configuration. That doesn't mean that an alumni wouldn't be on it as one of the picks that you'd have to constitute the board. It would just mean that it's not required for those 3 slots.
Are there any more questions about today's press conference?
Do you have any reason to believe that any members of the Holcomb administration or members of Elevate Ventures were personally benefiting financially from
I wouldn't speculate on that. That's why we're doing the audit. I mean, I think that when information comes forward, you learn about it, that is when you open it up to figuring out what was really there, and you do it with full transparency.
Governor, one thing that, reviewing these sort of previous audits that were done with respect to IEDC, because you would think that if an audit had been done before, someone would have found something irregular.
Were there other audits done along the way?
Well, financial audits, they
Yeah.
are traditionally done for, oh, I'm sorry. So with respect to audits, financial audits have been ongoing, and from a financial perspective, there have been no issues that have been raised. A forensic audit is a very different type of audit that's looking beyond the financials, but is looking into specific transactions as well as processes as well, so.
What will be the impact of this audit process on any deals that are currently in the pipeline?
Well, in terms of the deals themselves, if we're talking about companies that are either looking to expand or relocate here, those credits and things of that nature, there should be absolutely no impact on this. This is really more of an internal trying to understand amongst, not just with IEDC, but the affiliate agencies, are there issues that we need to address?
The IEDC's budget was cut by 25% in the most recent budget proposal. Is that, I know obviously there's lots of cuts overall in the budget, but is this also in response to concerns that have been raised?
No, I don't, at least personally, I can tell you, running the Commerce Agency, we've been a partner in this process. I mean, I think, you know of the $2.4 billion shortfall that the state has, but we're also looking at efficiencies and where are things that we can do to help really be a more effective agency, a more effective vertical. I would also say that one of the things that we're pivoting to in commerce that I believe is really important in this conversation is that economic development is a lot of ways been a very organic process. One of the things that's really important to the governor is that we focus on regional economic development. So we're spending a lot of time meeting those regions to truly understand what are they trying to accomplish economically. So as we go through this process, candidly, we're going to reshape the IEDC to support that in a very different way than we have in the past.
Any were concerned that this particular controversy could impact some of Indiana's efforts to bring out-of-state business to Indiana?
I'm sure other states will try to use this to try to make that case. We absolutely believe that the IEDC is a strong organization. It's a necessary organization to help us move this state forward. So we have not seen, and I don't anticipate that we're going to see any impact other than other states trying to make a case out of this. But I would share with you one of the other big changes that the governor's charged me with is we are going to be very proactive in terms of the businesses that we are targeting here. And we're getting a lot of very warm receptivity from the existing businesses that are here today in terms of helping with that effort.
A number of IEDC top officials left as part of like a traditional transition and administration. Do you feel that any of those departures were related to some of this potential wrongdoing that was identified?
I think that's highly speculative. I think, we clearly, I think every time you have a gubernatorial transition, there's a change in leadership and a change in teams. And so I think what has happened up to this point appears to be more of a natural transition than anything else. But I think this is all very normal.
Okay, now you can ask a couple non-related questions. Just a couple.
So any thoughts on the last day of session?
So, went through 3 of these, 15, 16, and 17. And if you recall back then, road funding was the big issue. And I see this as being no different than when I did that as a legislator, other than the forecast that we had to deal with at the tail end. And I also view that as something that comments were made in terms of being calm and getting through it. Well, that's part of what hits you, 08, 09, getting through COVID. States, especially businesses, had a lot tougher time of navigating through it. So I've been through several of them in the real world of running a business. And many times, I recall back to 08 and 09, revenues were off 50%. In some categories. In fact, the one I was involved with, and if you were solid going into it, you came through it, in even better shape in terms of what you could do through that crisis. Here, in terms of this session, no, I think it did get the surprise on the revenue forecast. A lot of that, I think, is the indigestion caused by a spendthrift administration over the prior 4 years. You're tackling those issues, and that's going to in the meantime, in the snapshot of the moment, change of forecast, we addressed it. So all in all, I think we got a lot of stuff done legislatively. When you look at healthcare, you look at a lot of the legislation that made it across the finish line. I think they did a good job with it.
Speaking of healthcare, a lot of those health transparency bills have kind of been pared back. Are there any disappointments with what's in your bill?
Well, when you're up against a lobby as strong as the healthcare lobby, from the hospital association to the insurance folks across the board, all I can tell you is when I was here in 15, we didn't get anything out there in terms of a hearing. But as I've been watching them, we didn't through those 3 years. I tried to make that an issue. It was that powerful. Now we know healthcare is a drag on our economy. You know, I did a lot in the U.S. Senate on it, and I think there's a moment in time where the players in the healthcare industry, big hospitals and big insurance, are going to have to get with it, or else there's going to be reform in a much larger way that'll probably come from the place I just came from. Slow there, but if you're not doing a good job in one of the biggest sectors of our economy, and in a place like Indiana, where we pay some of the highest costs with some of the poorest outcomes, don't think that that's going to continue year after year. I think we got a good start on it. I got here a week to 10 days after the session was already going. I think healthcare will be a big agenda item for next year.
Governor, you talked about the importance of transparency in state
No more.
government. Senate Bill 5 is heading to you now, and it increases some transparency measures in regards to no-bid contracts, that sort of thing, but it exempts legal services contracts. The IndyStar reported this morning that Lieutenant Governor Mike Braun has signed a legal services contract, a no-bid contract with a firm that's closely connected to his church. Do you think it was a mistake for the Senate Bill 5 to exclude legal services contracts, and do you have any response?
Didn't hear about that with the Lieutenant Governor's office until just a little bit ago. And I think whenever you're doing something that pushes the envelope or gives the impression of something, whether it's allowed or not, you ought to be careful with it. And this is something, when it does happen, that's maybe for a future piece of legislation to take care of. Go ahead.
Last one, Tom.
With the budget, we found that they zeroed out the Commission for Women, support for public broadcasting. What other things got zeroed out in this budget? Why go that extreme on some of these?
So when it got down to what did get zeroed out and what didn't, both chambers spent a lot of time on it. And my advice to them was we were going to find a way to do it. And I think with the revenue side of it, that was a public policy issue that found its right time to be relevant. And when it comes to the individual accounts like that, when you've got 50 in one chamber and 100 in another, you know, I was going to be fairly comfortable with what they worked out. When you're getting down to why this, why that, I'm not going to litigate that here. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.